So the rodeo is in town now, and they do a parade at the beginning of the rodeo every year. What a great opportunity to do street photography in a small town, kind of get better at what you do. Hello, and welcome back to the studio, and welcome back to a little series on the philosophy of photography. I tend to be pretty philosophical, and I find that it helps me be a better photographer when I do the things I do on purpose and for a reason. And so I just want to help you with that as well. Today, we're going to talk about how to be a better photographer. And there are 2 steps to being a better photographer. Number 1 is love the photos you take. Step number 2, learn to hate the photos you took. And you have to do it in order. You have to do it in that order. Number 1, love the photos you take. Find subjects that are beautiful, that you love, and present them the best way that you can. Use the gear that you have and present your unique perspective, and then love what you've done. Because that's the point. Even if you are trying to make money at it, it is no good to create art that you don't love. I have this view of art that it's a godly thing to do. God made the world which he didn't need to make, and he called it good. And so when you make art that you don't need to make, you don't need it to survive. You need food and water and all that sort of things, even though you're driven to make it. It has to be art that you look at it and you call it good, or else you won't keep going. You'll never get better because you'll just stop, because you'll be so discouraged because you hate everything you've done. And that's sad. That's deeply sad. Don't do that to yourself. Love the photos you take. But when you look back at them, after you love them, find out what you did wrong. Find out reasons not to like it. Only after you love the photo, then find out reasons to hate it. Look at composition problems. Look at technical and exposure problems, all of which are totally subjective. And I love photography because it's this blend between science and technology and objective things with art and subjective things. But look at what you've done and find something wrong with it. And then decide what you could have done better. And then when you are photographing something else, or the same thing, do it better. So those are the 2 steps. Love the photographs you take, and then learn to hate the photographs you took. Leave a comment below. What was the photo that you loved when you took it and now you kind of hate it? And just as an example, I'm just gonna slide up some photos. And so I'll just do like a little voiceover thing and have like a photo that I hate and then a photo where I fixed the thing I hated about it. Yeah, so here's that. This one over my shoulder here is one that I took on my honeymoon. It was my first attempt at kind of a long exposure star trails thing. And I took it as a single exposure, and just it turned out pretty cool. You've got the McDonald Observatory kind of silhouetted there in the foreground and the stars going by, but the star trails, they weren't all that long. I burned out the battery completely on my camera making this because I left the shutter open for so long, and I didn't know the technique of taking multiple 30-second exposures and then stitching them together to create these long star trails. And so I fixed that years later with this photo that I took
was running a file recovery, which tends to take a little while I was doing video and media for a summer camp. And so I thought, well, it's late at night. I'll go take some star trails while the file recovery runs. And so I did. I took multiple 30-second exposures, like hundreds of 30-second exposures, and then stitched them all together and came out with a much better photo. Here's another example of one that I did for a magazine. I was writing a profile on a gymnastics coach and pastor, and I did a shoot while he was doing some coaching, and I bumped the shutter speed up so that I could freeze the motion, but the lights in the building were not helpful as far as they were flickering at about 60 hertz, which means you shouldn't shoot a shutter speed faster than 60 hertz unless you have some kind of external light. And I didn't know that at the time until and I didn't really even notice it on the back of the camera until I went to go edit, and I noticed that. And so I had to do because half the photo was dark. And so I had to do a graduated filter in Lightroom to kind of save the image, and they were good enough to get published, but it was just a annoying thing to edit and an annoying thing to have to deal with. Just a little while later, found myself shooting under some fluorescent lights again with Brittany, and so I either kept it 60th of a second or under, like in this photo, or just a few minutes later, we were shooting in a dollar store, same kind of fluorescent lights, 60 hertz. And so I set my exposure to make everything dark so that those 60 hertz flickering lights weren't a factor at all, and used a flash, which has a cleaner, more predictable light, and you can bump that shutter speed up past a 60th of a second. And then finally, this one is of a friend of mine, Brandon. I use the Brenizer method to create a photo with an incredibly shallow depth of field and a super wide view angle, but just the way that it got stitched together, the proportions in his face and his body were not quite right. And so I kind of learned from that through a lot of experimentation how to do the Brenizer method properly, and ended up with this. And I'm actually going to be posting a video about it within the next week or so of Samantha, where it turned out exactly like I would want it to, where it looks like a single image of Samantha with a really shallow depth of field, like on a large sensor format, but taken with a crop sensor camera. So there's some examples of photos you liked that you learned to hate so that you can get better in the future.
So anyways, thank you so much for watching this video, for caring about my opinion, for subscribing and hitting the like button, especially if I've added. So that's all I want to do is add to you. Anyways, there's a jillion ways to connect with me. If you need a camera, I'll sell you a camera. There's links in the description below for that. Thank you. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.